Ahi Marae, tēnā koutou katoa. Inga mana, inga reo, rangatira mā, kia ora koutou. This is our last meeting for 2021 and what a year it has been. Before we launch into our last council meeting for the year, could I ask our ambassador to lead us in a karakia, and perhaps we could...
Season, and we acknowledge you and your sacrifice to all mankind, and pray tell, Lord, that as we've sat around this table, we've united for those less fortunate, for those that are sick in the hospitals, and for those who are grappling with this terrible, terrible thing we call COVID. So, Lord, on this day, as we go about our business for the people, by the people, of the people, just allow your humility and your love to prevail. And let your counsel preside, and let it go beyond the thoughts of mankind. We remember our families, Lord, that we represent today, our wives, our children, our husbands, Lord, and we thank them for the sacrifice they have made in sharing their loved ones with all and sundry. We thank you for this, Lord, and just want to say that we love you and we are grateful for you in our lives. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay, we're straight into it. I have apologies, a leave of absence from Councillor Anne Redstone. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dixon, seconded by Councillor Kerr. No further leave of absence as we all go to hopefully take a small break over the holidays. I'll move from the chair. Oh, we've got a mover and a seconder. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? Thank you, that's carried. I just remind everybody of conflicts of interest to declare them at the appropriate time. We have the confirmation of minutes of the extraordinary council meeting on the 21st of October, previously circulated. Moved by Councillor Watkins, seconded by Councillor Travis. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Just before we launch into the next item, I just want to give some highlights of my month, which I'm going to be far more organised in doing next year. But I just want to take a moment actually to acknowledge some of the amazing work that's going on in our community. And over the last month, we have seen people working really, really hard to get our community vaccinated. And I want to publicly thank everybody who's been involved, from our councillors and our staff, but to the wider community, our health professionals, our trusts, our organisations, our maraes, everybody who has been working so hard in this area. I'm very proud of our Heritonga efforts to get our community safely vaccinated. Another highlight for me over the last month was the opening with Dr. Megan Woods to open and turn the sod of the soil for new homes in Flaxmere. And what a very special occasion that was to have the Minister with us and be able to look forward to new homes for our people in Flaxmere. Fabulous Flaxmere's time, also a great new basketball court in the beautiful park in Flaxmere Park, and what a beautiful space that is for our community for the holidays to enjoy. I felt incredibly proud actually to attend and present the Hawke's Bay Regional Three Waters model in Wellington on Friday, and with Mayor Alex Walker, and we were told that we had the best presentation of the day, and it was quite clear to me that, you know, we had been working as a region when we first signed the MOU in 2018 to do that work, and how far we're ahead. And that was such an important occasion to be able to present so much work that had been done And we sort of take for granted as you go through the motions of doing that work, but when you actually present what you have done, and both Dan from Morrison and Lowe and Tony Goodlass assisted us in presenting the facts, and that's what the government working group were most interested in. So very, very impressed and proud to be able to present that Waters model. It would have been great if all the regions in New Zealand had a model to present, and I think that's probably would have been a very good start for us as a country, because it was quite clear that the working group were very impressed with all the work that had gone into that. We had the peace polls, World Peace, and for those of you who came to Civic Square for that ceremony, it was a very moving ceremony, and I acknowledge people who helped to get that ceremony underway, because for us at the moment, peace in our communities, peace in our world is a very, very important thing. So for us to and if you haven't been to see the polls, please have a look. They are pretty special. We are the new Tribune part opening is absolutely incredible for those to have a look at the old Hawke's Bay Herald Tribune store, beautiful retail down at the old Hawke's Bay Today building. What an incredible piece of work that is, and you can get a lovely coffee and a lovely lunch too, as well as buying the most amazing giftware. And so, you know, this is pretty big for us. It looks like something out of Melbourne or Sydney, and I loved going to look at that and working with the team. I attended the Hawke's Bay tourism function at Meadowwood House in Korokipo Road, and you don't know until you're invited to some of these things what is out there in our district, and what an amazing venue for functions and weddings. So it's got the yurts that you can have the function inside. It's got this most amazing Art Deco house that people can rent, and what a beautiful old mature trees, and it was a beautiful Hastings evening, and it was pretty special to be in such a gorgeous place, and recognise our tourism industry, who have had a really, really tough year, and have them all there together to actually hopefully have a better summer. We visited the Pakipaki Marae Renovations and Church Restoration Project, and I don't know about you, but Pakipaki must have been the centre of the earth back in 1880, and to see those beautiful buildings and to see what is used now with those 3 marae in that area, what an absolute jewel in our crown that we didn't, well, I was ignorant about, and it was absolutely amazing to have Charles Ropatini take us through those marae and actually be part of the history of Pakipaki. So that was a really special part of my month. The pump track at Flaxmere, which opens on Thursday this week, is incredibly exciting for the kids of Flaxmere. So they'll have a great place to use in the holidays. So Fabulous Flaxmere's time reigns through again. So there's so much going on there. It's so exciting to see all the hard mahi, and thanks to our team who have helped us deliver all these amazing projects. We were sad to lose Peter Paku, and he was an amazing part of our Tangata Whenua Wastewater Joint Committee, and I talked to the government working group about our wastewater committee that has been in place for many, many years, and how that is co-governed and how that functions and works. And I was able to tell the working group about the input of Peter, and I just recognise how focused he was in the well-being of making sure that we were considering all the cultural and environmental concerns of wastewater. And he was part of the Ruahapio Marae and part of that committee for a very long time, and just want to pay our respects to Peter. As Peter's whānau, who won't be around to share the festive seasons, and also think of our kaumātua Des Ratama, who we also lost this year, and think about Evelyn and whānau and Whakatū, because he is sadly missed. And at the beginning of the year, also thinking about our wonderful Annie Aranui, and when we work now with MSD and all of our government partners, and you see the legacy she's left behind, particularly with our youth, our wahine, and the work that she has left us in her time as the regional director for public service, wasn't it? But she was an amazing woman, and I saw Tania at our function the other night, and just acknowledged, and once again, we'll always remember her great work for us, for our people. So that's just a little update for me for the month, some of the highlights and some of the sadness as we move forward into thinking about our festive season for our community. It was amazing to hear last night that we have 1,000 lunches being prepared by 120 volunteers for this year for Christmas Day. Christmas dinner, and those 1,000 meals are going to be delivered. And to hear the volunteers that so many have come forward on giving up their Christmas Day to cook beautiful kai and give gifts and be delivered on Christmas Day, and how grateful we are to have such an amazing community. Last night, actually, our community thank you is definitely a highlight for me. And I'd like to acknowledge Sue Maxwell as our Rural Community Board, who that was her last Christmas party, and it was, Christmas thank you, and it was important to her and her contribution she's made to the rural community of Tūpohui. So it was lovely to have our Rural Community Board members there. Oh, Tūtira. Sorry, Sue. All right, so moving right along, everyone. Item number 5 is the State of Environment Report 2015 to 2019. Welcome to Junior. And Junior, and Rowan, and you might like to take us through this paper and tell us what it means for us. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. This document's just a snapshot of the Hastings district between 2015 and 2019. This is the 3rd edition, so it had been previously done by council officers, and that would set the template of what we use now today, and just updating and changing indicators for future use. So just in a nutshell, it pretty much just goes through when we log things into the system, a database of whether it's resource consents, building consents, what's happening in the space of water use for the district, for that period that is. As we all know here, a lot has happened in recent years, so this is what I'd say would be out of date, which will be updated in the near future.
It's a statutory requirement under the Resource Management Act to produce the State of the Environment Report. As Junior said, it's to be completed once every 5 years, so every territorial authority has that duty under Section 35 of the Act. And again, as Junior said, it does provide a snapshot and it shows trends on how we're trending, going right back from 2003. So it covers, this one covers the period 2015 to 2019. So it has been delayed a little by COVID because a lot of the statistics that we rely on to produce it weren't available, so that's why it's a little bit later than normal.
Thank you, team, and a big piece of work here. I'm really interested in understanding how we get the information, how we access that information. If I look at page 92, we look at the customer surveys. How do we, and if we look at the residents' perception of public art and culture opportunities, how do we gather that information? Between 2014 and 2019, it's quite a significant change in residents' perception of art and culture. How do we gain that information, Junior?
For you, Chair, we use the comms team, and they've got a group that they use, and it's called, sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head, but we tend to send our surveys to give a snapshot of what the community feels. You can't really take it as gospel because when you break down the stats, you look at the respondents and they tend to be a higher in age. But it does give us a snapshot of those people who are available.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Travis.
Thank you very much to the council officers who produced this document. I found it absolutely fascinating. I mean, I love information, and to be quite so fine-grained about our district was really, really helpful. There was only one slight suggestion, and you may reject this out of hand because it may not fit the brief of what we're supposed to be reporting on. But I notice under the heading ethnic composition, you've just reported on the percentages of Māori and Pākehā in the district. I know last year when we were working on our multicultural policy, we went to great lengths to try and find information about the various ethnicities within our community, because we're aware, and we can see what's our population increase, something like 14% over the last few years, and we are kind of anecdotally aware that they've come from a multiplicity of countries. And it just seems to me that it would actually be helpful to include in that very authoritative report the range of countries where our citizens have come from. And also, in terms of that population increase, it would be helpful to know whether it's internal migration within New Zealand, or whether although migration has stopped in its tracks at the moment, whether these people are new residents or new migrants to New Zealand.
Thank you, Geraldine. Councillor Travis.
Through you, Chair. Yes, those are very good points that you made, and I think probably the reason why it just relates to Marae Pakihara is because when it, this document was first set up, it's just transitioned through and probably hasn't, as you say, kept up to date with how society's changed, and those are very good points, and we'll make notes to make sure they're changed in the next version.
Thank you. Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you, Your Worship. Very comprehensive report, thank you. It was a pleasure to read. I'm particularly interested in the function of the report in developing strategy and policy in the future. And we're in a very fast-changing environment. So my first question is, the information we've got is 2 years old now. Is it normally 2 years in the making, or is it 1 year? Has this been delayed because of COVID or something like that?
Through you, Chair. Yes, it is usually a year in the making. There are a lot of people that we have to approach to get the statistics. It also involves going back through all of the databases, going back through our IT department and getting all the information out of the databases. So it is quite time consuming. So it can take a year to develop the report, and we did have those hiccups with COVID, two lots of closed downs.
So it should be 2 years in the making, or 1 year?
Well, just 1 year in the making, and normally, yes.
And then the second question is 1.5 on the introduction. The report has been instrumental in informing the completion of the eco-district strategy and identifying several potential issues within the Hastings District Plan. I'm just wondering what the process is for us discussing those potential issues in the district plan and how we're going to progress those.
Through you, Chair. Yes, that is a good point. Those issues should be showing trends that we might need to start looking at in terms of our policy direction in the district plan. So are our policies still looking at and addressing the outcomes and the issues that this report might be raising? So it is something that we probably need to bring back to the district plan and bylaws subcommittee as looking at the issues that might need to look at through the rolling review of the plan, some of the issues that we might need to start addressing and where those priorities might be.
So will that be on the agenda of the next planning and bylaws meeting?
Through you, Chair. Yes, we can look at bringing that back to the next district plan and bylaws meeting.
Yeah, I just asked because we're 2 years now we delay it 6 months, we're just not current with our information.
And through you, if I could, Your Worship, just encourage the Deputy Chair and Chair of the committee to put that on the agenda, because the officers work at your direction.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm quite interested on page 103 and how we will, and the resident satisfaction with council roads, and the change between 2014 and 19. And I would like this as an item brought back in ops and monitoring, please, to have a look at this resident satisfaction over those 5 years. Thank you. I'll just put that as an action. Thank you, Lynn. Right, Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Rowan and Junior. I support the previous speakers, and how do we make this a document that we can rely on? And I also would like an action point that this document is stored on the hub as a reference document, so we can easily access it and make use of the data that's in there. And further to that, I'm happy to move receive the report, etc.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Barber, you happy to second the report?
Sorry?
You happy to second the report?
Yeah,
Thank you.
got a question too.
Cool,
Yep.
thank you.
Just looking at page 87, or 86, just around our outstanding natural landscape features, and the graph outlines the numbers of consents that have been received. My question is, were those received and granted, even though there's not many, which would suggest that our planning, our policies are probably doing what they were there to do. But still, I'm looking at the yellow tips on the graph there. So were those received and granted, or were they just received and declined, or are people still finding loopholes to be building on our outstanding significant amenity landscape areas? Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Barber.
Through you, Chair. I think those are just resource consents that have been received, rather than received and granted. So it's to show what we're trying to reflect is what kind of pressures are being placed on the environment, rather than necessarily what's been granted and followed through. So we're looking at those as I said, the pressures that are being brought to bear.
Can I just follow up with that? So I guess my question is, do you think our policies around these features, outstanding features, are doing what they were designed to do, which is to preserve the natural landscapes?
Through you again, Chair. I think partially. In terms of the landscape itself, we know very well that there are cultural aspects that have been highlighted through the Tamata Craggy Range track, and those we are in the process of addressing. But I think in terms of landscapes themselves, yes, we have been improving the protection of those, and we'll continue to do so.
Councillor Barber, you comfortable with that response? Or
we are doing work on the eastern side of Timata, but this plan extends right out into the big list of areas: Tamata Peak, Kahuranaki, Mount Erin. There's a whole list of extremely important landscapes to us as Ngāti Kahungunu. So I'm just understanding there are pressures to build and house people, and invariably, that some of that pressure is going to extend into parts of our countryside that are culturally significant and visually important to our district.
Through you again, Chair. Yes, and that Tamata is the first priority for us in terms of looking at it, and we are then going to be moving forward to look at the remaining areas, and addressing those, matters of cultural importance as they're in those landscapes as well. So that is on our priority listing for our plan revision. So we are moving forward with that.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, thank you. I presume we'll all go through this document and look at the relevance of particular things that we are actually involved in more closely, and therefore how does that form our decision making around those, and some wondering, or what is the best way that aspects, I understand Councillor Kerr's suggestion that this sits on the hub as a document, but whether we do honestly refer to it too often as in its entirety, I'm not too sure. But there's enough information in here that is of benefit to each of the subcommittees and the standing committees as well. And so I'd like to see how there is an ability to strip some of that out. I just point to, and it would have been fantastic if I'd had this stuff at the Active Transport subcommittee only 2 weeks ago, where we've got satisfaction of trail networks and a rising concern about very dangerous, being on roads and stuff like that, and we would have actually therefore talked around those particular issues probably in a little bit more depth, backed up by the information. So I would like to see a task of how this is best interpreted for the committees that we have, please.
Thank you.
So through you, Chair. I think a starting point heading into the new year with the responsible officers for each of the subcommittees would be to actually have this as an agenda item in terms of, well, what are the strategic themes that are raised in terms of what the purpose of this report is, in terms of where are the pressure points on our environment, what does this mean for our priorities and our forward work program, because it should inform and give life to the things that are most important in terms of the objectives that have been set by council, and that's driving the work programs. So I'd suggest that an action in the new year is that should be an agenda item on each of the subcommittees with the responsible officers.
Thanks, John.
Through you, Madam Chair, a good example is Councillor Corbyn. He's wanting to have each year give an update of the amount of land that's been lost to production. So and then what we're going to do is we'll track back to the end of this one, then give a year, and then another year, and then annually we'll report that through ops and monitoring. So there's a bit of a gauge of how much is being eaten away. So if and I think Nigel's correct, if it comes through each of the committees, you pick up the areas that you want further maybe monitoring or work directions, that would be really useful. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's really important, Nigel and John. But I think that there's some incredible information in this document, and it's understanding the past and how that influence our decision making and investment in the future. So in terms of how we manage our annual plan and our LTP, long-term plan, given the effect to this document, is absolutely key. So, and if I go back to the resident satisfaction with council roads, then we can actually understand what our investment is. Does it need to be more? What is the customer satisfaction? And actually plan rather than just say, this is what we need for rural roads. We actually have some information here about what community thinks. Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just picking up on Councillor Harvey's point about active transport, I imagine that was a regional discussion?
No, district.
District, was it? My question was going to be, has Napier done a similar document on the same time frame? Are they in sync with theirs, or are we out of sync with it?
Warren, would you like to, do you know the answer to that?
Your Worship, I'm not aware that Napier has got a document like this, and the time frame was just really often following Statistics New Zealand and also I think it was five, I think ours started because it was 5 years after our first plan became operative. It was released after the 2003 district plan became operative.
I just read it as a statutory.
I think, through you, Your Worship, Ryan, you might be well placed on this. Whilst I understand it as a statutory requirement, I'm also aware that not all councils have complied with their statutory obligations.
Thank you.
Yes, that's correct.
Great, thank you. Okay, so any other questions? So we've got a direction for what we use this incredible State of the Environment report for 5 years, and it's going to be led through our subcommittees, and that's in action. And I have a mover and a seconder. No further questions or comments. I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Moving on to item number 6 is the recommendations from the Rural Community Board. Did the Rural Community Board members want to add anything or speak to those recommendations?
No, Your Worship, I'm happy to move.
Thank
There's
you.
no key decision making there.
Great, thank you. Councillor Sears, second. Thank you. Any questions, councillors? I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That's carried. We have item number 9, which is the recommendation and reason to move into public excluded. And for items 10, we'll start with 10, 11 and 12. And can I have the officers responsible explain to us why these items 10, 11 and 12 would be in a public excluded agenda?
As through you, Madam Chair, each of the items involve council entering into commercial negotiations, so they involve both business sensitive information of council and of third parties.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Happy to move from the chair. Seconded, Councillor Barber. Any questions? I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That's carried. Now our council will move into PX item, and as this is the end of our public live streaming for 2021, can I acknowledge and wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, a very prosperous, happy and rewarding and safe and well Happy New Year. Kia ora koutou katoa.